Baltimore City Council Ways and Means Committee, we're back in session. City Council Ordinance 22-0235, Ordinance of Estimates for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2023. I'm Eric Costello, Councilman from the 11th District, Chair of the committee. Joined to my right by Council Vice President Sharon Green Middleton, 6th District member of the committee, and to my left by Councilwoman Odette Ramos, 14th District. To my immediate right is Marguerite Kern, staff to the committee. On behalf of Council President Nick Mosby is Matt Stegman and Nate Poole, and on behalf of Mayor Brandon Scott is Nina Themelis, Natasha Mehew, and Sophia G. We're here for Department of General Services, or DGS. How many slides do we have?
6, sir.
6, okay, great. So what we're gonna do is as follows. First, if you're speaking, you're welcome to take your mask off. Please just make sure whether you have it on or not, you're about 1 hand length away from the microphone so that the folks that are streaming at home can hear you clearly. If you don't follow that, I'm going to politely interrupt you. It's probably going to happen 3 or 4 times during the hearing. It's quite okay. It's happened during every hearing. So please don't let it faze you. So we have Director Attila here, and we have Deputy CAO, Nyagi Nash. Deputy CAO, I understand you're going to be leading the presentation. What I'm going to ask you to do is jump into your slide deck, like old times, and limit your presentation to about 10 minutes if possible. I think we're all very familiar with your operation, and then we will jump in and get questions from the council. Does anyone have any concerns with that? And Madam Deputy CAO, before you begin, or if you want to pass it to the director to do, if you could introduce all of your staff that are here, first and last name, title, and whatever division they're with. Take it away.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Chairman Costello, council people. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. As you stated, there are 2 people sitting in front of you representing the agency, and just for the record, I would like to state that the only reason I'm here is because our brand new DGS director is 5 days into the job, and so the nature of our co-chairing this is such that I will be presenting on the budget as it was compiled in his absence and answering any questions about past performance. Any requests of future activity within DGS, please do direct them to Director Attila. So I'm joined by DGS Director Berke Attila. Also here with us is Ben Brosh, CFO. I'll start on that end. Christopher Lyons is the Division Chief for Fleet Management. Next to him is Frank Forca. Frank is the Chief of the Office of Performance Management. Next to him is Terrell Chesson, who is the Acting Deputy Director at this time. Next to him is Julia Kalas. She is our Energy Guru. Marwan Al-Karajat is the Chief of Capital Projects and Energy Division. Going back to the back there, that is Matt Rappaport, Deputy CFO. Next to him is Hillary Chester, who is all things real estate in DGS. Catherine Burns, next to her, is our HR chief. And then last and finally not least is Annie Fullis. Annie is our administrative office manager, as well as our legislative liaison and our equity coordinator. Don't need to rehash everyone on the org chart. Any chance the battery's dead?
Marguerite, she needs help with the slides.
Hey, Marguerite, can you give her a hand with the slides? Thank you.
Did you get it? No?
No.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you. It did something. It's not a, it's, Marguerite, it's just left and right, correct?
Mm-hmm. How are you?
Okay. It is. Okay. There we go. Thank you. I was being too gentle with it, apparently. All right. So the first service is Service 189. This is fleet management. Fleet, as you all know, is responsible for the purchase and the maintenance of the city's rolling stock of vehicles. Of note on this budget is that we are entering the 10th year of the city's master lease borrowing for the procurement of vehicles. Just had a conversation outside with Chief Lyons, and he was sharing with me some of the most recent price increases that we're seeing with vehicle procurement. And just as an example, heavy equipment, heavy-duty vehicle costs have increased 39% from the last round of purchasing that we did. And so we are going to start seeing that for the dollars that we're investing, we will be getting fewer vehicles. And so I just want to, state that if compared to how many assets we've been buying in the past, we will now start seeing, at least for the next year, fewer vehicles being able to be afforded through the program. In addition to that, we all know that fuel costs are going up, as well as all the other operational costs of fleet management. But I just wanted really to point out the rising cost of vehicle purchases. Administration is service number 726. Nothing necessarily of note here. We did move one position into the general fund from service 731, and so that is what you see in the budget book, is the one transfer. Public and private energy performance, service 730. In the last year, we've seen Julia and her team do an amazing job of securing multiple grants from different funding sources, particularly the Maryland Energy Administration. And so the funds coming in through the grants that they've been able to secure are really helping us invest a lot more in not just like retrofitting of LEDs in multipurpose centers, but also in some forward thinking and some resiliency feasibility studies to help us make decisions in the coming years about where it is that we would be able to be more sustainable in our consumption of energy. Facilities management is service number 731. That is the service that's responsible for many of the city's buildings, not all. Definitely the municipal core of buildings downtown, in addition to several others, making for 82 core buildings. I will also point out that in addition to these critical assets, which are the functioning municipal buildings, DGS also has in its portfolio 17 surplus schools, only 3 of which have occupants in them. So that's 14 schools that are vacant, that the agency spends money and a lot of effort in trying to secure, that we make sure that we continue paying the electricity bill, because we need to have working lights outdoors and the ability to be able to power anything that we need. We keep the utilities on, we keep the water on, because to be able to ensure that the sprinkler systems are still working should there be a fire in the building. Of particular note there is that even despite an increase in the number of surplus buildings that come into the DGS portfolio, there is not a related increase in the resources that follow them. And so Terrell and his team in facilities management, their personnel, their cadre of vendors have to be pulled off of doing work in the critical core buildings that are occupied by agencies that are providing services directly to the residents, in order to make, to the best of our ability, make sure that the surplus schools are maintained, are kept safe, which, as Councilwoman Middleton knows, is an ongoing battle. And I sit here today and defend DGS as best I can in that. So, for example, what we have to do with those buildings is For the security, we do have a roving security. They do patrols 3 times a day. We've even gotten to the point of welding shut the doors to try and keep out the people who are stripping them of copper and other critical systems like the boilers. They cut through the weld. We go back and re-weld it. So it's an ongoing battle of trying to stay on top of these buildings. And so it is definitely not for lack of trying that we struggle with being able to maintain the security of these facilities. Last division is capital projects and energy. That is the old name. We refer to it as CP&E, capital projects and energy. They are responsible for the planning, design, and construction of our buildings. They are also, they're responsible for the capital design and construction. This year, as was presented in the capital budget portion of the hearings, we have a lot more of an allocation than we have had in previous years, and so Mr. Al-Kharajat and his team will have a much heavier load in trying to get through projects than they have in years past. So it's a good problem to have, but it is something that he and the team will have to build up capacity to. And I believe that is the last of our slides. And I'm pushing it as hard as I can, Marguerite. Nothing's happening, but I'm pretty sure that's the last one. It is the end. And so I welcome any questions that you might have.
Questions?
Mr. Chair.
Council Vice President Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could we have an updated org chart sent to the committee, just with, all the, that would be helpful?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's my ask, Mr. Chair.
I think, Madam VP, let me check.
That came up in the last hearing. We're getting one for everybody.
I believe we have DGS on hand. So we made a request beforehand. I'm almost certain DGS is in. You can disregard that request. I have that on hand.
Okay.
We were waiting until the overwhelming majority of them are in.
Okay.
Sophia, is Nina here? Because I know she's kind of been. I can't hear you. No, I know. We were waiting to send those out to the council until we had a complete list, and we'd send it out as a zip file.
Okay.
But we do have.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
So I guess I'll just start with the discussion, the school buildings, and I'm bringing it up because the Baltimore City Public School Systems were here earlier, and I just kind of, brought up that question to them because they can just, once it's surplus, they just send it over to us, and the schools become a quick burden, eyesore. All the council members kind of expressed that in a sense in our discussion with the CEO of the school system. But I did ask, them, as they're handing over these schools, along with that, do they have ideas of what do they think would be good options or people to put in this building? Do they, instead of just passing the buck and passing it over, because it has become a history of eyesores, and just speaking in my district, I think I had 4 or 5 schools that have transferred, and I kind of worked hard with Langston Hughes, which now is privately owned, and working hard to maintain their building. But it seems like these buildings now have also become a burden for council members, because we're the ones that get the complaints for the grass and the maintenance. And yes, you did mention that you put locks on the doors, and it seems like you should probably invest in some kind of steel door or something, because when they come in and take all of this copper, which is very expensive, and it's something that thieves are looking for everywhere. And and when I talk to my colleagues, we're feeling this, that as soon as a school closes, as soon as a rec center closes, it seems like it's an organized crime group that gets wind of this. I mean, I think it's something really serious to, probably have a team discussion about, because of they come back. They're brave enough after one theft, they'll keep coming back. And at this particular school, there was a water problem too, and are you really going to sit down and have conversations, especially since you have 14 now that are vacant? It could be really a financial burden if we continue in this route. Your comments?
Yes, it is a financial burden, not will be, is. And yes, we definitely have been having conversations about how better to secure them. So when I said we weld the doors shut, it's not a lock that we're putting on. They are welding the door shut. And these individuals who are coming around have the equipment to get through that weld. And yes, we do believe it might be a professional operation just based on the quality of the cuts and their understanding of the systems and the way in which, they are getting in there, and the type of material that they're taking out and the way in which they're doing it.
Have you invested in cameras as well?
We have talked about that. We don't have the funding to be able to put cameras in all the schools, and so what we have had is the roving security guards, again, who are there 3 times a day at all the schools.
Okay.
And as soon as they witness anything, they immediately call facilities maintenance or BPD or our security center down here, our unified security, and advise them, and then we respond immediately.
And then I guess my last question, you had mentioned, when you mentioned about fleet and the gas, are you investing in electric vehicles as well? You want to talk about that?
Yes, we definitely are. So Chief Lyons has been instrumental in the push for us to very strongly encourage. We can't quite require it yet, but strongly encouraging agencies for, particularly within the non-vocational fleet. So not trucks, not utility vehicles, but the administrative portion of the fleet. As specifications are being written and in collaboration with agencies, there is a big push for those to be EVs. He's also working very closely with Ms. Kaylaws and the Sustainability Office in trying to think about how we get ahead of getting the infrastructure in place at the locations at which agencies are parking their vehicles, so that once the EVs start rolling in, there is the infrastructure to be able to charge them. Additionally, Mr. Lyons and the fleet team have moved the city in the direction of B20 biodiesel, which, and the switch will be happening in July once they've had a chance to inspect and clean out the tanks at the fueling stations. And I'm someone who is a very visual understander of things. So I just want to share with you some examples of what Mr. Lyons helped me understand the value of the B20,
Okay.
if I may.
Sure.
Okay, so B20 in the vehicle fleet that was studied by MEA's Clean Fuel Technical Assistance Program. Once it's fully implemented and all the tanks have been replaced diesel and biodiesel, the equivalent is going to be approximately, we should be seeing about $340 million in fuel cost savings, and from an environmental perspective, about 3,400 metric tons of greenhouse gas eliminated, 400,000 gallons of diesel displaced, and then this is where it gets nice and visual for me. These emission savings are the equivalent of 5,640 trees planted in a year, or 975,000 trips across the Bay Bridge. So if you think about it that way, just by switching.
975,000?
Yes, sir. And so and we'll be burning cleaner diesel, and cost savings and an impact on the environment. And so, and that's just one example of how Chief Lyons and Ms. Kalas are every day looking for new ways in which the DGS operation can tweak, can change things that they have to do anyway, but do them differently with that new perspective, that new lens of sustainability. And I should note that also Ms. Kalas is part of the Mayor's Subcabinet for Resiliency and Sustainability. She runs she is a co-chair of the building sub-cabinet. And so it's not just on the fleet side. She's very, very much making an impact on the decisions that the city's making on buildings.
And then lastly, I'm sure you've partnered with MOED for youth workers and or maybe some potential apprenticeship programs. I don't know, your new director that's going to be stepping in, I'm sure he's going to be implementing some new ideas of things if you want to share.
Am I doing it the right way? Okay, I can hear myself. Yeah, I mean, I think apprenticeship program, especially for a department like Department of General Services, where we have trade folks and we have schools that are bringing those people up and about, and we can be the group that can provide the on-the-job training rather than really focusing and competing with the mature job market, where we know we have our challenges. We don't need to get into that right now. It gives us a dual opportunity for first getting the talent and then hopefully keeping them with us. But at least if we don't keep them, we will be able to get them trained and we get something out of them. So there are programs at the state level also. Last year I was at MACO and I attended it, the conference, and I have good relationship with them to further the state program of apprenticeship, especially on the HVAC side. So we're going to be definitely looking into those programs, how to double down on what we have and expand.
I do know, too, that some of our CTE schools, there's one in particular that had been trying very hard to keep their auto repair program going, and that happens to be Forest Park High School. And they were looking for, like, old cars and things like that to where the students could use to work with, but, you know, that's just another partnership to help through those kinds of apprenticeships.
And we have donated vehicles to, I don't know if we did Mervo, but we did Forest Park. DGS did donate a vehicle to Forest Park for that reason, yes, and so.
I remember that.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. I'll stop there, Mrs. Chair.
Thank you for taking it easy on my constituent there. I appreciate it. When a request for service is made, are we tracking how long it takes for that request for service to be completed?
Yes, we are, but I would just clarify that DGS does not get SRs through 311. So if those are the requests that you're referring to, then
no. I'm sorry. I don't even know the system that I would use, but I'm a city employee and the elevator is broken. What would I do?
So the system is called Archibus. That is the FMS system that the facilities division is using. And yes, those work orders are tracked. So the answer to what would you do is you would reach out to your agency's SRL, Service Request Liaison. So not every employee has access to Archibus, and that was intentional because it's a series of drop downs, and you have to be pretty clear on what the request is that you're making. And so within every agency, there are individuals who are trained as SRLs, and so you would then go to that individual, explain the issue, and they would put it into Archibus, and then from that day zero, we do track how long it has been in the system and each status along the way.
Chichi, if I may add, also the reason why we wanted to keep it just to SRL is that we don't want to get 10 different requests on the same problem. So that really helps focusing on the issue. The SRL would know that they would get multiple complaints and they would add one.
Got it. Makes sense. Does DG, I think you referenced this earlier in the week, Deputy CAO. Does DGS have a long-term plan for maintaining all city-owned buildings? This is a
Ask
question
that
from
question a
Councilman.
different way, please.
Yes. So this is a question from Councilman Burnett. Well, yes. Let me ask it a different way. Can you talk to me about? Can you talk to me about what plans, if any, DGS has that address long-term capital needs and capital needs and maintenance in city-owned, non-vacant buildings that the city uses for its own operations, whether that's a school or a police station or a rec center or an office building like City Hall?
Yes, that I can answer, and my answer is going to be restricted just to the buildings that DGS is the responsible agency for. So I won't be speaking on behalf of Rec and Parks or DPW or any of the others. The question is for DGS. DGS does have several initiatives underway to think about the long-term needs of the buildings. It starts off with understanding what is their square footage actually required for an agency to operate in that space. And so we have an amazing individual in Willem Elsevier, who is an architect and is our space planner. And so he will go and work with agencies and using industry norms and benchmark numbers on square footage assigned to an individual depending on their operation. He will have conversations with them and try and get them. Right now it's an ask. It's not a requirement that they comply with it, but he will recommend how much space is required for that operation. Just thinking back to 2 years ago, where that came in very, very handy, along with Carol Young in the Facilities Management Division, having some of that work already done and having the process in place really helped at the beginning of COVID, when we had to work with agencies and understand, if we cut back to 50% occupancy in a space, what does that mean? Which cubicles can you use? Which ones can't you? And so it all begins with how much space does an agency really need? And so that's just at a micro level, Chair Costello. At a macro level, DGS is sitting in working groups with others, including Planning Department, the Capital, what is their name? The CIP group. Them, I'm sorry, I forgot what the name of the group is.
That's what they call them now.
Yeah, the CIP guys. The Office of Real Estate and Finance, and trying to think through how do we assess the long-term backlog of capital repairs trying to look forward to assess how much space we need. So as an example, I know you asked about occupied buildings, but part of that work is also about surplus buildings and trying to think about more creative ways to creative and expedited ways in which we can reduce the square footage of assets that DGS owns. And then, it's also in ways such as the Future of Work initiative, or reimagining the workplace, where in the initial assessment prior to the pilot kickoff, which actually kicked off just about a week ago. So we were about a week and a half into the Future of Work. But the assessment that was done at the front end, along with Ernst & Young, resulted in findings that of the pilot agencies that are taking place, we could reduce the space by 50%. And so that is, and that's just by moving to a hybrid model, shared workspaces, as opposed to assigning spaces to people long term. And so in many different ways. So there is not one strategic plan for it, but just multiple arenas in which we are assessing how do we reduce the square footage, and then working with planning and finance to figure out how do we dispose of these assets. I had a very interesting conversation with Director Ryer on Monday, trying to think through again, how do we holistically, if we can find a way to consolidate operations, even just in the downtown campus, into fewer buildings and therefore free up one entire building, in what way would we approach the market and start doing market assessments and see what the market can bear and what type of use would even be feasible in what is traditionally a municipal plaza area around City Hall. And so, again, it's micro, it's macro, it's taking as many different approaches as we can to try and answer that question.
Thank you. Kimmy, that was two of Councilman Burnett's question. I've sent the balance over to Councilwoman Ramos. I have, can I do my two questions? And I'm going to go to you. Those were both on behalf of Councilman Burnett. First one is the item from last week that we went out in the hallway to discuss. Are we making progress on that item?
Yes, sir, we are.
Outstanding. Thank you. Second question is, not necessarily a question, I'd like to talk about the BPD vehicle fleet and what the status of that is. My understanding from last year around this time is we had a significant number of BPD, do we still call them cruisers? Patrol cars?
Patrol cars, yes.
Patrol cars. Four-door sedans. That were under the weather and not operable. Can you give me a rundown on what the fleet looks like, what the status is, how many cars are in order, how many are not? Just talk to me, please.
I will make the request to, I will answer part of that, but also make the request to be able to provide that, for the agency to provide a report on that, on the fleet, the makeup, and the operability of said vehicles. I don't have that at the tip of my tongue. I don't believe Chief Lyons would have that at the tip of his tongue either.
Sir, I'm going to ask you you can take any seat you want, but I just need you to talk into the microphone. Please and thank you.
Thank you, sir. Of the order last year, we ordered 80 units. Of those 80 units, 75 have been delivered and are received and are in the process.
Closer on the mic. Yep.
And are in the process of being upfit. A large number have already been upfit and are in service. Of the FY22 order, there were another 88.
Let me pause you for 1 second just for clarification. You said there were 80 from when?
Last year's fiscal budget, the master lease budget.
From fiscal 21.
From fiscal 21.
Got it. And of that 80, 75 have been delivered
And 45, 50 are in service today.
And the balance are in the process of being outfitted?
Correct.
And do we know what the status of those other 5 are?
Those 5 are currently sitting at the dealer. There are some components that the dealer installs for us. We're anticipating those vehicles to be delivered to us next week.
Let me pause you there. So the process is we go through our procurement process, and everything's buttoned up with BOE, for lack of a better term, and then the dealer gets those vehicles, makes some modifications to those vehicles, then delivers them to the custody of the city, and then the city does additional outfitting, and then they're put into service?
That's correct,
very
sir.
generally speaking.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, so 5 are still at the dealer. About 30 are in the process of being outfitted, and about 45 are in service. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Excellent.
And you'll forgive me, that number changes on a daily basis.
Sure. Generally speaking.
Yes.
May I add some context to that, please?
Please.
So unlike years past where if we put in an order for 80 vehicles, we would have seen vehicle carriers here dropping off 80. This year or last year, what Fleet saw was them trickling in, and that was only because of Chief Lyons and his team calling the manufacturers and begging and pleading for them to get them on the assembly line for us. And so because we were competing with so many other jurisdictions and because of the supply chain issues, they trickled in. And so when you hear that there are now 5 at the vendor, at the dealer just getting that initial upfitting, it's because they came in piecemeal.
Totally understood.
And for FY22, sir, we ordered 88 marked patrol units. Those units are scheduled to be built in November at this point in time, but that's, when you talk to manufacturers about production schedules, that's very much a moving target.
Bear with me for 1 second, please. Okay, and generally speaking, it sounds like the major supply chain issue is in between when things get buttoned up at BOE and when the dealer has the vehicle in order to be able to make the modifications the dealer needs prior to providing it or turning it over to the city for the city to make its customizations, correct?
Correct. Right now, in the last 2 years, the biggest delay has been on the assembly line.
Assembly line, okay. And then, so it was 80 total for 21, 88 total for 22.
Yes, and there's an additional 50 units that we ordered that BPD was able to fund through asset forfeiture, which aren't tied to master lease. So that's now bringing us to 132. And those units as well will be built in November and December of this year.
So you said 88 before and then 50, which would be
An additional 50.
Yep, which would be 138, but then I heard you mention 132.
I'm sorry, 138, forgive me.
138, okay, got it. And then the face that you made and the tone of your voice when you said not tied to master lease suggested that that is an optimal place to be. Is that correct?
Well, most vehicles with the city are tied to master lease. We're using the master lease funds to purchase the vehicles. But because of some of the challenges that we've had with BPD vehicle availability, they generously have offered up some additional funds so that we can replace vehicles at a faster cycle.
And how were those, what was the funding source for those 50 additional?
I believe it was,
Asset
I
forfeiture?
believe it was their asset forfeiture money.
Okay,
I believe that's grants.
correct?
Yeah, but one potential issue for the future, master lease is more of a guaranteed sustainability funding source for replacement. Asset forfeiture fund, if it dries up later down when we need to replace those assets, it could potentially be a problem. Not saying that that might disappear, but we do have more direct control working with BBMR to make sure that we have funding available versus departments' grants availability through Homeland Services and whatnot. That's something that we may not have a control over. So that wouldn't be a preferred way to do long-term replacement, but however, it's a great addition to be able to add more vehicles.
Got it. So I won't use the budget term one-time money. I'll just say one-off. And is there a different level of bureaucracy associated with kind of that one-off that we're doing with those 50, notwithstanding the funding source, the original funding source itself?
Not from a fleet perspective.
Okay.
And
excellent.
of note, sir, all these vehicles that we ordered last year and this year, just of note, are hybrid vehicles. So they essentially consume 1/3 the fuel that the traditional vehicles that we're replacing did.
And we can do that with police vehicles?
Hybrids, yes. Electric vehicles, no. Because most of the BPD vehicles work on a 24-hour shift. They're essentially when one officer goes off shift, somebody else jumps right into it.
Grabs the keys.
There's not enough time to recharge an electric vehicle for them to be out on the street. So the hybrids make a great interim step while the technology is evolving.
Do the hybrid vehicles have the, forgive my lack of terminology, the under the hood muscle power to operate as a police vehicle?
Yes, they do. They are pursuit rated vehicles. So Ford builds them it's referred to as a PIU, a police interceptor utility vehicle.
Got it. And I can only assume they don't have a pursuit rated electric option for, among other reasons, the reason that you described. Okay.
Not at this time, yes, sir.
Very, very good. And then what is programmed for 2023?
Forgive me, sir, I'll have to respond to that separately. I don't have that information at my fingertips.
That's not going to be a separate line item in the budget, is it, Bob? And I'm just just because you didn't have the answer offhand.
Are you referring to the number of police vehicles specifically?
Yeah, in FY23 in the book.
No, it's not a specific line item. There's a line item in DGS's budget under fleet, which is basically fleet purchases. It's debt service essentially, because we're borrowing the money, and now that we're in our 9th or 10th year, I think we had said. So there's not a line that you'll see for the direct purchases by agency, but they have a list that they submit to us of what they can purchase with those funds, and then the debt service shows up in the DGS budget.
Okay, and then if you could you get back to me in the next day or two
Certainly, sir.
on the number program for 23?
It will be a planned number until we actually secure the funding. That number is not what we consider a guaranteed number, but we can certainly tell you what our plan is and what our target is.
Right. Let me frame the question a different way. Can you tell me the number of vehicles that you expect to be able to purchase based on the amount that is in Bob's budget book?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I've got the first part of it. The second part of it, can you walk me through? So I purchased some cars from Marguerite's dealership. She moonlights as a car dealer. And Marguerite says, okay, City of Baltimore, we got to do a couple things to these vehicles, and then we will turn them over to you. And then on July 1, let's say, I get the vehicles. What do I need to do as a City of Baltimore to get those into service to BPD? I have to make some set of outfitting / modifications. How does that work?
So, sir, before we ever order a vehicle, we meet with the agency and we determine what kind of additional equipment will be placed on the vehicles. So light bars, different types of rear seats, the shields that go between the front and rear seats, things like that. We get all that defined before we ever order the first vehicle. We order those components at the same time that we order the vehicle, because unfortunately the supply chain issues are not just limited to the vehicle manufacturers, but also the upfitting suppliers. When the vehicles arrive, we have a team of 6 external upfitters, plus the ability to do that upfitting internally as well.
Can I pause you? You say we have 6 external outfitters?
Vendors.
Vendors.
To perform the labor to install these items
They'll
on the
put in
vehicle.
the plastic seat in the back.
Yes.
Right. And are those 6 vendors, they have some type of blanket contract with the city?
Yes, we currently have contract with 6.
Okay. And those are all either local or regional?
Regional.
Very good. Okay, please continue.
So once we receive the vehicle, what happens at Fleet, there are certain components like the fuel system device that goes on every city vehicle that the dealer installs. So when the vehicle comes in, what we do is inspect the vehicle, make sure it's got no damage. We load all those components in that vehicle. We then call the different upfitters that we have. They come pick the vehicles up. They complete the upfitting, and they return them 1 week later. So from the time that we receive the vehicle to the time the vehicle is ready to go into service is anywhere from a week to 8 or 9 days, depending on coordination and weekends. And that includes the graphics package that goes on all the new BPD vehicles.
So in your professional opinion, the outfitting action is not a bottleneck, correct?
No, sir. I'm not going to mislead you. When we first started using vendors, we had a few hiccups and some challenges to work through, but currently, right now, it's working flawlessly.
You tell me it's taken under 10 days. It sounds like you're pretty on top of it as far as I'm concerned. I'm not I would have to talk to my friend who has the car dealership here, but it sounds like you're on top of the ball. Okay, you've provided me all the background information that I need to ask my question and understand where the deficiency is, so thank you. What is the total number of vehicles that BPD needs in its fleet and has in its fleet?
The BPD fleet is significant in size because it encompasses much more than just patrol, which we have relegated our conversation on. Sir, in all honesty, because of all the different bureaus in BPD, I would feel much more comfortable sending you an inventory of that tomorrow morning.
That would be great. And can you have that, let me take a step back. I assume that there are BPD, there are vehicles in the BPD fleet that are not pursuit related, that are for other functions.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. So could you have that list broken down by pursuit related and non-pursuit related?
Certainly. When I provide it to you, I'll provide you the right legends, but we refer to them as either marked or unmarked. So the marked vehicles are the ones with the lights and the sirens that are pursuit rated. The unmarked are traditionally administrative or executive vehicles.
Okay, excellent. I want to shift back to the deputy CAO and your deputy CAO role, not former director of DGS role, if you will. So we had a significant outage of, we had a significant number of police pursuit rated vehicles that were not operable last summer. Can you summarize for me the actions that the administration has taken between then and now, and what is required to happen between now and the end of this upcoming fiscal year based on your appropriation, and how you're going to continue to move the needle on that issue?
Absolutely. The short answer is buy more new vehicles faster. And so in addition to the vehicles that Chief Lyons talked about, there is also a request into the ARPA office for $6 million for BPD patrol vehicles, knowing again that they have a very, what did you say, tired, spent? How did you describe their vehicles? Overused, whatever you said, that they have a
Tired's a good word.
Okay, right. So they have a fleet of vehicles that's well beyond their useful life, in a serious note. And so, yes, a replacement schedule for very quickly replacing those, both following the replacement schedule that DGS has used for several years to anticipate or to predict what vehicles need to be replaced, in addition to weaving in the results of the Civic Innovators work that was done about 3 years ago, that went a little deeper in depth about and did benchmarking with other cities and produced a report essentially advising the city about the rate at which we needed to be replacing the vehicles. And so that's why you see efforts made to go above and beyond what would be just the regular allocation in the city's replacement plan.
And is that a report you can share with the committee?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Nate, Sophia, you got that along with Mr. Lyons that he agreed to share earlier. My last question is a $6 million ARPA request, is that enough to get us at full capacity? And if not, how much?
I'd have to do the math and get back to you on what the deficit is. $6 million is not going to get the full replacement of the fleet, nor do we want it to be. So to Mr. Attila's point, we have to be careful about the funding sources that we use for these fleet replacements, because in a few years they will come due for replacement. We also don't want to replace too many at the same time, because they will all come due at the same time, and so it's more advisable to phase in the replacements.
So I would be very interested in, I'm just making up numbers. If BPD usually has 100 fully equipped pursuit rated vehicles, what is the bare minimum number that they need at any given time? And maybe that number is 80, and maybe we only have 60. And what does it take? Where does that $6 million get us on that line? Does that get us to 80? Does it get us to 90, 100? Okay. Well, I really go ahead.
So just so that the number that has been shared with us with DGS by BPD about their daily requirement, or how many vehicles they need on the street, is 309. And so on a daily basis, that's how many vehicles Chief Lyon and the fleet team are trying to ensure have four wheels on the ground and moving.
Thank you. It sounds like from my conversations with BPD that number has gone down since last summer. I'm not sure what has changed about that, but I look forward to discussing that in detail with command staff this evening. Thank you. Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank you for fixing the light right here in the stairwell. That was a big deal for a while, so we're happy for the little victories. Thank you very much for that. I had a similar line of questioning around our fire apparatus. I visited I have 2 firehouses, and I know our firehouses are getting an infusion of capital, which I'm excited about. When I visited Engine 21, this was in January, they had just gotten the engine back, and it broke down the same day. So I'm curious, what are we doing to try to make sure that, and my understanding from our firefighters is that it takes a while to get the engine back, and they may not have a reserve. So they used to apparently have somebody who went to the firehouse to try to fix it, and sometimes it's too complex and all of that. But if you can let us know how things are going to improve, on how we're repairing. I know we're also getting new apparatus as well, so if you can talk about that, that would be great.
Absolutely. So yes, the availability of fire apparatus is a challenge. So with an allocation of $26 million in 1 year's round of procurement, if you think about a ladder truck costing $1 million, there's only, we have to space them out in order to be able to accommodate the Packers and the Vactors and the police vehicles. And so as much as we would want to much more rapidly update the fire department's apparatus fleet, there are limitations as to how many can be purchased at a time. Additionally, we have a situation where, and it's difficult to fault a decision like this, but maintenance of that apparatus is very, very expensive. And so in some cases, a decision will be made to turn it in early for replacement, even if its replacement hasn't arrived yet. And so that sometimes leads to a situation where there are fewer apparatus on the street than we would desire because they were turned into DGS earlier. And then to your point about it does take a long time for a piece of apparatus to be built. It can be somewhere along the lines of 16 to 24 months for the construction of a fire apparatus. And just this afternoon, Chief Lyons informed me that of 3 large pieces of equipment that we have on contract with a manufacturer to produce for us, we were just informed that because of the cost of steel, they are going up by 20%, which is the equivalent of $750,000. And so, yeah, wow. We're just being hit everywhere on the maintenance, on the availability of parts, on the upfront purchase price. And so it is not something that DGS is not aware of. I'm looking here at a report that DGS produces every day where they are tracking what are priority vehicles. So they track every day the availability of load packers, of pump engines, of ladder trucks, of medic units. And so daily, Chief Lyons and his team are looking at these numbers and seeing if availability has been met and using that to prioritize which vehicles is he going to call the vendor and tell them focus on this one, put that one back on the lift, just to be able to get these assets back into the firehouses.
So what's I guess it depends on the apparatus, right? And the repair in terms of average days that an apparatus is out. So you don't really have an average.
We could provide that. It would mean running a report, but definitely that data exists because much like with Arquebus in the faster system, when a vehicle comes in, that's day 0 until it goes back out, and we track every dollar, every part that's put on it, every hour of maintenance labor, and so we can certainly tell you the average downtime for a piece of apparatus.
That would be phenomenal. Sophia and Nate, average time that a fire apparatus is out on repair would be helpful, just to kind of get a sense of where we are and where we need to go. So thank you. I appreciate that. My second question, I don't really need all the same details that my colleague needed around the fire apparatus numbers. So I think just the repair, I think will be fine. And we're getting 3 new trucks? Is that what you just said?
We're getting 3 new trucks under one contract.
Use the microphone, please.
Apologies. We're getting 3 new trucks on one contract, and I believe we have 2 more on a different contract.
Okay, and then we're also getting the 2 EMS at some point in time.
Yes, forgive me, I don't have that number off the top of my head, but there is an active PO for EMS unit, or for medic units.
Yeah, I do know because the mayor said he's going to do two more units, so there's going to be 2 new, at least 2 new, right, okay. But it sounds like we're still there's still a lot that we need to cycle through and try to make sure that, that we have the up-to-date apparatus for our firefighters.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. The other question I had was, last year at this time, we were getting inundated with complaints about Workday, particularly from DPW and DGS workers, who obviously, were just learning that they had to go online to do. How I haven't had a complaint in a while, but how are things going there? Are folks not having as many problems with Workday?
I will defer to Catherine Burns, our chief of HR, who lives and breathes all things Workday, to share what has transpired since the initial rollout of phase 1 of Workday.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
So at the Department of General Services, even during COVID, we actually went out to all of our employees to train them during the beginning of the rollout. We had that little minor bump with
Yes.
the things that had to be flushed out with the system as we're learning the system as it was. We got over that bump. The HR office helps support employees who are still trying to learn the process. I spend time with facilities lately and make sure that their folks are trained. From a payroll perspective, our guys are doing really good, our men and women. When we first rolled out Workday, I could spend a whole day on payroll.
Sure.
And I'm now spending about 2 hours for approval. So they are getting much better, and it's now just more teaching them the other processes.
Sure. Well, and also if there's overtime and that kind of thing, anything that's out of the ordinary, their usual payroll, that obviously we need to make sure that they know how to do. Yeah.
And we keep them as quickly as possible trained on anything that we see as key. So when I'm looking at payroll, I'm focusing on what the issues are. If I see something that's not normal, I reach out to my colleagues to make sure that they're aware of what the issue is. And then if we need to and we see that issue continuously happening, that's when we go in and make sure that the folks are trained.
Yeah, that's helpful. We have a magical person like that here in City Hall. She's magical, and that's a super important role, so I'm glad that you also do that. I just wanted to check in about that. Madam Chair, are you chairing?
Yes.
Okay. I just have Councilman Burnett's questions, if that's
Oh,
okay.
go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Councilman Burnett also wanted to get a list of all currently DGS-owned properties, so that's vacant and occupied by district if possible. That will help us with sort of keeping track of all of our buildings that we're dealing with, because I share, and I think he shares the same concern that Vice President Middleton raised about some of our buildings. So just, we all kind of want to know and make sure that we have that dialogue. So if we can provide that list, that would be super helpful.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Sophia, Nate, got it. Okay.
So how soon, what's a good date you would have that list ready?
The gentleman said we can email it now. So let's call it close of business today.
Close the
All right.
business.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, if we could have it organized or at least indicated which district, that would be super helpful. Related to that, how many vacant lots is DGS responsible for? And how are you working with, do you have your own folks that mow the lawns or lawns, the grass and weeds, or do you work with DPW on that?
So we don't have vacant lots like DPW would or HCD would. The properties that we're responsible for are adjacent to the buildings
Okay, gotcha.
that we manage. So our occupied buildings and all the surplus schools. We do have 2 vendors on board, Garrison and Roca, and they, for the most part, are able to keep up with a lot of the lots, in addition to in-house crews who, on occasion when a vendor can't get out there on time, or because there was a rain disruption and they had to skip the biweekly schedule, Mr. Chesson will send out the internal maintenance crews, and they will get on it. So it's a combination of in-house and the 2 vendors.
And you had mentioned earlier that normally there isn't a SR associated. So if usually, but in this case, a resident might say, hey, the grass is high, send in an SR, and that would go to you to maintain, correct?
Have we ever received, do we get SRs?
I'm sure
Oh,
of
okay,
it.
I'm sorry. Acting Deputy Chesson says that we do have access to it. So that's not the primary way in which we are informed, but yes, I am informed that we do have access to Salesforce, and so they would be assigned to DGS.
Gotcha, okay. But generally, you have every couple of weeks that you're mowing.
They're on a
they're
biweekly schedule during the mowing season, yes.
Okay. And so that would just, you don't have any vacant lots, you just said. So
Not
even
standalone lots.
Even with, when a facility, one of your surplus facilities is demolished, I guess that's usually after the sale. So for instance, we'll just pick Lake Clifton out of the air. Lake Clifton, in my district, you're disposing of first before it gets demolished, and so that's not going to be your responsibility once the property transfer happens. Got it.
In that case, yes, the property transfer is imminent, and so it would not be. We only have 2 schools, I believe, Sarah Roach and Rainer Brown, that have been demoed, and so it's not the ordinary situation for DGS to have a demoed building while the property is still ours as responsible agency to then become a vacant lot.
But in those 2 cases, those have been demolished. You'll need a microphone. You'll need to get on.
Sorry, Sarah Roach is on a list, has not been demoed yet.
But it's on the list, and then once it is demolished, you will have to maintain that lot. And that will go with Roca and the other vendor, correct?
Identify yourself. You can use the microphone.
Yeah.
And if you want to take your mask off, you can. It's up to you.
Hillary Chester.
Grab the microphone. You can grab it.
Grab it. Okay, thank you. Hillary Chester, Department of General Services. So what will happen once the school is gone, then we'll want to get rid of the lot. So it actually gets transferred to HCD for them to put through the process of RFP or, one of their vehicles for property disposal. In some cases, it might be going to BDC if the property is in a near or in a commercial district or industrial zone, which is rare, but it does happen from time to time. So at that point, yes, we would continue to mow it. Now the issue is that once it goes to HCD doesn't have mowing contracts like DGS does, so we end up doing the mowing anyway. Are we responsible for it? But no.
Right.
Right.
No, we appreciate that. Thank you, because we've learned that DPW and DHCD rely on each other. DPW just has 8 crews for the entire city.
Right.
So, yeah, appreciate that you continue to maintain those lots. So it's just those 2 lots, Sarah Roach and soon to be Sarah Roach.
Soon to be Sarah Roach. There's another that is currently underway, which is Sharp Leadenhall. But my understanding is that because it's adjacent to a park and it's going to be ultimately transferred to Rex for them to expand Solo Gibbs, that it will be maintained by Rex as well once the school is gone. The only reason it was transferred to DGS is because it made it easier to go through the demo process, and because Rex doesn't do buildings and we do buildings,
Gotcha.
we don't do lots. So
I know it's complicated.
So that's that will be a location that, you know, I would expect will be maintained by Rec and Parks, but we'll definitely have that conversation once the school is gone. So,
Gotcha. Okay, thank you very much for that. And again, thanks for continuing to maintain those lots. Switching gears, this is Councilman Burnett's question. Can you talk to us a little bit about the low percentage of city government electricity use that is renewable? Is this in line with other similar jurisdictions? Is there a way that we can proactively address this low percentage? So I know that you're studying this issue, right? In terms of how to make sure that the energy that's coming into City Hall and our other buildings are all is renewable.
I've asked Ms. Kalos to come up because she'll be able to go into what the plan is going forward. But just to clarify, the resiliency assessment, or what I talked about.
I think you talked about a little bit earlier
Yes.
with Councilwoman Middleton's
That
question.
is to put in place resiliency for the downtown complex with, you know what, Julia, I'll just let you explain what the project is and answer Councilman Burnett's question. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman. Name is Julia Kalaz with DGS. So in terms of studies that we're doing looking at renewable energy usage, one of the most recent awards we received was a technical assistance award from Maryland Energy Administration to look at 25 city facilities that we pre-screened as potentially locations for on-site solar. So that would be specifically rooftop solar. We're also working with DPW looking at landfill locations that would then be able to feed either city buildings and city needs, or else be able to feed potentially community solar, other usage. In addition to that, we do purchase renewable energy credits through our energy purchasing strategy that is in compliance with the Maryland Renewable Portfolio Standard. Currently in solar, that's 2% and then 18% for Tier 1 renewable energy credits. While we do produce some renewable energy out at Back River, that we do not retain the renewable energy credits for that production, so we cannot claim it towards a renewable energy goal.
Mm-hmm. I would encourage us to look into continuing to move in the direction of community solar. I think it's such an opportunity with so many government buildings to be able to put solar and then allow for the residents around the area to take advantage of lower bills, right? We actually have and the Vice President knows about this, there's a town in Prince George's County, Edmondson, that basically went completely off the grid through community solar. And I know that would be really hard for us, but at least, you know, schools, government buildings, other opportunities for that would be really huge, I think, for our residents too.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I agree should be on the table and should be considered when we're making any investment on what the best financial and community benefits are. The one item I neglected to just mention is that we are working with the Baltimore Regional Cooperative Purchasing Committee to purchase an additional amount of solar energy that would be 15% of our usage as well through a power purchase agreement. I said solar, but it is renewable energy specifically with a focus on most low carbon opportunities in that regard. So focusing on, it would be potentially wind or solar or similar
Sure.
renewable production.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then we do get, just to bring this back in, the incinerator provides steam, but also other energy as well, which, by the way, we're going to close it at some point. So I'm hoping that there's some planning through DGS and other entities. We really want to close it, by the way. So to make sure that we still are able to get whatever energy, that was. I'm sure that's going to have to be in the thinking stages.
Yeah, so for DGS and city buildings specifically, about 50% of our steam comes from the Wheelabrator. Comes from natural gas and the Wheelabrator steam. And some of our renewable energy credits do come from incineration, but I'm not sure if they're specifically coming from Wheelabrator.
Okay, that's significant. And obviously, if we're on track, we to try to address this issue, we're going to have to figure out a way to get that 50% back in other ways. So, good to know for sure on that. Let me see if he's got any other questions here. So this question is related to, let me just see here, page 166. The percent, this page 166 in the book and the effectiveness indicator, the percent of corrective maintenance work requests completed on time. Obviously low in 2021 for COVID reasons. And your targets, and first of all, what's the definition of on time?
The threshold that.
Yeah, sure.
He didn't catch that. The threshold that DGS has set is 21 days for completed on time. So that's the SLA.
So that's 21 days, and your target is 65% in 2023?
Correct.
So the light in the stairwell took many weeks. I guess, it depends on what the industry standard is, right? In terms of whether we want to wait 3 weeks for it also depends on parts. It also depends on, lots of different things. So is that one of the reasons why your targets are so low, or you've got other factors that you're looking at?
So this one pertains specifically to preventative maintenance, so not the responding to an issue that pops up. So this is, the proactive replacement of filters, or and anything else that is scheduled and known and anticipated. It needs to be completed on time. They do track, not for budget book purposes, but they are also tracking corrective maintenance and how long it takes from inception to the completion, and then ultimately closing out of the work order in Archibus.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think that's all he has, and that's really all I have. Is there anything else that you want to add to your budget requests? Anything you want to reveal?
I defer to Director Attila.
Any new exciting things that we're expecting as you've been here 5 days?
Well, I would really refrain from making any suggestions within 5 days, but if I could request Chi-Chi's presence in the next year's budget hearing, that would be really great, because this was very helpful.
Oh, I mean, this is in her portfolio, so she's going to be here, I'm sure. Yeah, right. Right. Well, I appreciate everybody's time this afternoon. Thank you so much for all you're doing and for taking our questions. I'm interested in some of my other colleagues are our energy folks and our environmental folks, so I'll detail to them a little bit about what you've talked about and see if they'll need to follow up on anything that you're interested in.
If I can only add one thing, one of the main reasons, alongside with many others, the future of energy management, electrification of the fleet, using more renewable energies, using our facilities, combined with the future of work. Those are the things that I really got excited about this opportunity. So now that I have a chance to really impact the city and its residents, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yes, well, I believe we had just passed, or it's pending, a bill to make sure that more of that happens. So it's not my bill.
That's great news.
But cool. All right. Thanks very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank
you. This committee is in recess until 6 o'clock when we hear from BPD. Thanks.